uh, my parents' household chore.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure that keeps you busy.
No?
No, it does not. I'm sorry. It is so wonderful to meet you. I'm very glad you're here. Um, do you have any specific goals for this class? You want to grow in English?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. We'll do that. It's so nice to meet you. Thank you for sharing.
Yes. Thank you.
Mhm. Is there anyone else who'd like to share or introduce themselves? Okay, we can go ahead and finish that part. Thank you to everyone who shared. I know that it can be difficult if you don't feel particularly confident in English. It's strange to try and talk and converse over Zoom in this type of a setting. So thank you for those who took that step and shared about themselves. It's so wonderful to get to know you, to meet you, and just hear a little bit about who you are. I've kind of shared, a lot of you guys know me, the ones that don't. I'm a third grade teacher, so I teach 8 and 9-year-olds. That's what I do during the day. And this year I have just wonderful, sweet little baby children. We have a good time together. So I hope in this class that it's helpful. We'll be doing a lot of vocabulary learning. So although I am a teacher, I don't feel like I'm qualified to be an English teacher. So I just try my best. If there's ever anything that you guys want to practice or work on, just let me know, even if you just type it in the chat, or you're welcome to just say it too. Like, hey, could we practice this? Could we work on that? I'm very much open to feedback. I really appreciate that, because it just helps me to know what will be most helpful to you. So in a second here, I'm gonna ask if there's anything specific you guys would like to study during this, next 7 or 8 weeks, however long it is. But in general, I've learned, as a teacher, I want all my things to be research based, to be data driven, of like what's going to be most effective and helpful to an English learner. And there's research that was done that if you study vocabulary, the more interactions you have with new words and you talk about their meanings and discuss different contexts they can be used in and multiple meanings, and you have this discussion about new vocabulary, then it becomes a part of the knowledge in your brain. And the more you interact with those vocabulary words, the more confident you become in them and you understand them, not just for its simple definition, but in a variety of contexts and in the culture. And so there's a few different activities you can do to experience new vocabulary and discuss and practice it. Right now, and what we did in my previous class, is I pull passages and I try and find passages with advanced vocabulary, because most of you are already advanced English speakers. So I try and pull from like SAT practice test or the TOEFL practice test or those types of things that should be more advanced. And what we do is we read through it to get some context, basic understanding, and then we go through paragraph by paragraph. And anytime that we come to a word that you don't know, we stop and we talk about it. And you can just ask what the definition is. You can ask for examples. You can say, I've heard this word, to be used like this, but in this, how else can it be used? And we can have a discussion back and forth. That way you have all this exposure to these new vocabulary words. So that's kind of the format that we'll be following. We might add some activities here and there, and discussions like this. I like to give opportunity for you guys to practice your English as well. Is there anything that you as students say, hey, could we talk about this? I'd like to learn that. It could be something about American culture. It could be something specific to your field. It could be something in English that you're really trying to practice. Is there anyone who'd be willing, who says, hey, can we practice this? I'd like to learn this in this class. Is there anyone who wants to unmute or raise their hand, something that they want to practice or learn? And if not, that's okay. We will just follow the format that I was talking about to practice that vocabulary. If there ever comes a point when you say, hey, let's talk about this, just let me know. So we'll go ahead, and we have some time. Let me pull it up here to be able to jump into an article. And I pulled this from the practice SAT test. Hopefully has some interesting vocabulary in it. Okay, let me share my screen. Here it is. All right. Trying to get on my side of the screen situated. So it's just a passage from Louisa May Alcott, a book called Rose in Bloom. It was originally published in 1876, so it's a pretty old book. I read this book as a child, maybe like a preteen, and just loved it. It's a good book. If you are interested, Louisa May Alcott is like a very famous author in the United States, very good writer, excellent literature. If you're ever interested in English books, you can look her up. She has lots of really wonderful, sweet books and just like excellent vocabulary, and just like the literature is very good. So we'll go ahead and just read through it, and then we'll go back through. We won't get through every single paragraph to go through for vocabulary, I don't think, with the time we have left, but that's okay. We'll either finish it next time, or we'll just get through it. We get through it. I'll read the passage. As I read, just be noticing, understanding words you don't know. You might want to jot some down if, it might be hard for you to remember. But we will go back through paragraph by paragraph, and any questions that you have about understanding, comprehension, vocabulary, we'll talk about. So, all right, we'll go ahead and read. It says, 3 young men stood together on a wharf one bright October day, awaiting the arrival of an ocean steamer, with an impatience which found a vent in lively skirmishes with a small lad who pervaded the premises like a will-o'-the-wisp, and afforded much amusement to the other groups assembled there. They are the Campbells, waiting for their cousin, who has been abroad several years with her uncle, the doctor, whispered one lady to another, as the handsomest of the young men touched his hat to her as he passed, lugging the boy whom he had just rescued from a little expedition down among the piles. Which is that? Asked the stranger. Prince Charlie, as he's called, a fine fellow, the most promising of the 7, but a little fast, people say, answered the first speaker with a shake of the head. Are the others his brothers? No, cousins. The elder is Archie, a most exemplary young man. He has just gone into business with the merchant uncle, and bids fair to be an honor to his family. The other, with the eyeglasses and no gloves, is Mac, the odd one, just out of college. And the boy? Oh, he is Jamie, the youngest brother of Archibald, and the pet of the whole family. Mercy on us, he'll be in if they don't hold on to him. The ladies' chat came to a sudden end just there, for by the time Jamie had been fished out of a hogshead, hogshead, the steamer hove in sight, and everything else was forgotten. As it swung slowly around to enter the dock, a boyish voice shouted, "There she is! I see her and Uncle and Phoebe! Hooray for Cousin Rose!" And 3 small cheers were given with a will by Jamie as he stood on a post waving his arms like a windmill while his brother held onto the tail of his jacket. Yes, there they were, Uncle Alex swinging his hat like a boy, with Phoebe smiling and nodding on one side, and Rose kissing both hands delightedly on the other, as she recognized familiar faces and heard familiar voices welcoming her home. Bless her dear heart, she's bonnier than ever. Looks like a Madonna, doesn't she? With that blue cloak around her and her bright hair flying in the wind, said Charlie excitedly as they watched the group upon the deck with eager eyes. Madonnas don't wear hats like that. Rose hasn't changed much, but Phoebe has. Why, she's a regular beauty, answered Archie, staring with all his might at the dark-eyed young woman with a brilliant color and glossy black braids shining in the sun. Dear old uncle, doesn't it seem good to have him back? Was all Max said, but he was not looking at dear old uncle as he made the fervent remark, for he saw only the slender blonde girl nearby and stretched out his hands to meet hers, forgetful of the green water tumbling between them. During the confusion that reigned for a moment as the steamer settled to her moorings, Rose looked down into the 4 faces upturned to hers and seemed to read in them something that both pleased and pained her. It was only a glance, and her own eyes were full. But through the midst of happy tears, she received the impression that Archie was about the same, that Mac had decidedly improved, and that something was amiss with Charlie. There was no time for observation, however, for in a moment the shoreward rush began, and before she could grasp her traveling bag, Jamie was clinging to her like an ecstatic young bear. She was with difficulty released from his embrace to fall into the gentler ones of the elder cousin, who took advantage of the general excitement to welcome both blooming girls with affectionate impartiality. Then the wanderers were borne ashore in a triumphal procession, while Jamie danced rapturous jigs before them, even on the gangway. Archie remained at his uncle Archie remained to get his uncle. I can't read it right. Archie remained to help his uncle get the luggage through the custom house, and the others escorted the damsels home. No sooner were they shut up in a carriage, however, than a new and curious constraint seemed to fall upon the young people, for they realized all at once that their former playmates were men and women now. Okay, so we'll go to the top. We kind of understand the passage. These characters are cousins. Obviously, Rose and Uncle Alec and Phoebe have gone away on a trip. They've traveled overseas and they're coming back, and all these boys are welcoming their cousins home. So we kind of understand. So now we'll go through any questions you have about comprehension, and questions you have about vocabulary. Maybe it's words that you recognize, but is in a new context, or maybe you're wondering if there's more meanings. You're welcome to type it in the chat. It's nice when you guys are able to unmute or raise your hand, so then there's some conversation back and forth instead of me just defining words. But whichever works better for you. So I'll read the first paragraph and then any questions that you have. So 3 young men stood together on a wharf one bright October day, awaiting the arrival of an ocean steamer with an impatience which found a vent in lively skirmishes on a small lad who pervaded the premises like a will-o'-the-wisp and afforded much amusement to the other groups assembled there. So are there any questions in this first paragraph? There was someone in the chat who said a wharf. A wharf is like a bay or like a dock. So like they're coming on the boat and they go up to the dock to be able to dock their boat to be able to walk ashore. So that's what a wharf is. It's like the bay. All right, any other questions from the first paragraph?
Hello. I'd like to know, like a will or the whips. Whips. Like, is it an idiom or
Yes, it
something?
is. Yes, it is. What it means is like, I'm not good at explaining things like this. It's like he's a little boy who is just kind of darts about, and it's just kind of like here and there, and you just catch a glimpse of him there, and then he's off doing some other thing. So sometimes people use will-o'-the-wisp like a really like slender, skinny person, just like they could blow away in the wind. So he's just kind of running around. He's just kind of, you see him there and now he's gone. It's just something that's there and gone. It's someone who's just so, I don't know how else to explain it. But that's the connotation that if it was used, that it's someone who's just kind of there and then disappears again. And this connotation, it can also be used in the sense of like, people will say like someone who's very, very thin, and just kind of dainty. So that's the best I can explain it. It's hard for me to explain idioms. I'm sure if you Googled it, they might be able to give you a better like definition of what each particular word means, but that's just the general feeling that you get when you hear that idiom.
Yes, thank you. I see. So it means the person is very thin to blew away. Just
yes. It has
okay.
this like, if you imagine like just like a wisp of like grass or something on the wind, like, like, yeah, that's like the feeling of it. Any other questions from the first paragraph? Let's see. I wanted to point out vent has multiple meanings. Vent can be like, I don't know, I'm trying to think. Like a heater in a house that like warms the house and air blows through it, can a vent, or even like on the street, like in our cities, like the pipes and stuff underground are like heated because otherwise they'll freeze. And there's like vents in the sidewalk and in the road so that the hot air can like blow through. So that's a definition of a vent. Something, whoops, that like lets air blow through. But then vent can also be a verb that is like an outlet. People like, oftentimes people use it like, I'm just venting to you, and they're like complaining and maybe gossiping, but they just feel like they're venting. Venting is like trying to get something off your chest, and you're not trying to you're not trying to complain, you're not trying to gossip, but you just like, you're so frustrated by some issue and you just have to talk about it, and so you vent to someone you trust. So that's like the verb meaning. So in this case, it's sort of an figurative language. It's not a literal vent letting air through something, but it's just saying that they're so impatient that it vents, they let go of their impatience by their lively skirmishes, their little fights and play and that type of stuff, to let go of that impatient emotion. So I just wanted to point that one out. Are there any other questions from paragraph 1? Okay, we'll go to the second paragraph here. They are the Campbells, waiting for their cousin, who has been abroad several years with her uncle, the doctor, whispered one lady to another, as the handsomest of the young men touched his hat to her as he passed, lugging the boy, whom he had just rescued from a little expedition down among the piles. Which is that? Asked the stranger. Prince Charlie, as he's called, a fine fellow, the most promising of the 7, but a little fast, people say, answered the first speaker with a shake of the head. Are the others his brothers? So we'll pause there. Are there any questions from this paragraph? Oh, I keep forgetting to look at the chat. Okay, so back up on the first one, skirmishes. Skirmishes are like, most often it's used in the context of like war or battle. A skirmish is like a small battle, a small fight, not large scale, but small. So they have a skirmish. So in this case, the boys are like, boys fight with each other and they wrestle and play. They're like wrestling and playing. It's like it's not a big deal, but they're like fighting and playing together. So that's what a skirmish is. But most of the time in the United States anyways, when you hear the vocabulary word skirmish, it's in the context of a battle, but it's like a small one. Pervaded means like to go throughout. Pervaded is like it's everywhere. It's like it has seeped through everyone. So they're all over the place, right? They're wrestling and they're impatient. They're running around, right? Especially the little boy, and he's just kind of everywhere. Pervaded the premises, the area. It's in everything. It could also be like you're cooking, and the aroma, the smell pervades your whole house. Like it just goes everywhere. The second one, whispered. Whispered means to like whisper like this. Like you don't use your voice. You probably can't even hear me. But like whisper means that you don't use your voice. I tell my little 3rd graders, if you touch your throat and you can feel vibrating, you're not whispering, because they'll be so loud. It'll be like, you need to whisper. And they'll be like, we are, but you're not. Anyway, so that's what whispering is.
Teacher,
Yes.
skirmishes means fighting with war to words. It is like a quarreling.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. But it's more like a physical. It's not just like fighting like verbally with someone. It's like physically wrestling or using a weapon of some sort. It's like a physical fighting, not just like I'm arguing with you. Yeah, good question. Another question from the chat was lugging here. This means to carry. It's usually in the sense of like you're pulling it along or you're like dragging. It's not like, oh, I'm walking down the street carrying this thing. It's like I'm lugging this thing. So people will say like some big giant box, right? Got to lug into my house. Or in this case, he's grabs the little boy and is carrying him back to where they should be. So it's like you're like pulling with some force. It's not necessarily easy to carry. Any other questions from the second paragraph? Expedition is like an adventure to travel somewhere. It's like a little traveling adventure. Okay. Oh, this one I was going to explain. Y'all might know this already, but it says the young man, well, it probably should say man, touched his hat to her. People don't really do that anymore in the United States anyways. Like back in the day, because obviously this was written in like the 1800s, when men would wear hats outside, women too, men would like touch their hat or like lift their hat as like a kind greeting to people. We don't do that anymore. In general, in the United States, men just nod their head at you, like to women. I don't know what they do to other men, but to women, they just kind of nod their head, and that's like just a nice greeting in the street. One more question from a little expedition down among paths. So again, expedition is like a little adventure. It could also be a big adventure, like an expedition to the moon. It just means you've like traveled somewhere, you've done something. So among the piles just means like, because they're on a wharf, right? They're on like a dock. If you imagine like all these boats and like all the things and the fishing and the all the stuff, right? You guys know what that is. And so there's just all sorts of piles and all sorts of things and wood and things that are on docks and nets and I don't know. And so it's just that, right, they're impatient. This little boy especially is obviously running all around and getting into mischief. So he's gotten into some sort of trouble or adventure among the piles, among the wharf, the dock, all the things that are there. So he's bringing him back to where he should be. Okay. We'll go ahead and pause our vocabulary conversation there. I think we might come back to it the next time around, the next class, just so that we can look at some of the more vocabulary, so that we don't just, since we didn't get very far through it. So I'll stop sharing my screen. If you've been with my class before, you know that I like to end my classes reading from the Bible and praying with you guys. If you're new, I like to read from the Bible and pray with you guys. I don't know if you know, Daniel Education Center, we're Christians and I'm a Christian. That just means that I believe in Jesus, that he died and rose again, and that he has saved my soul, and he's forgiven me of sin, and he's given me eternal life, and I can have relationship with God here on earth, and I will live with God after I die. And I can't win my own salvation or somehow be a perfect person or somehow achieve peace by myself, but I need Jesus, and that I'm separate from God who made me, who made the whole world, if I don't have Jesus. And so I'm so thankful to God every day that he has saved me, and he has given me eternal life, and he has forgiven me of sin, and that he made it so easy to have relationship with him. That the Bible says that if you just believe that Jesus died and rose again, and you confess with your mouth that he's Lord, that you'll be saved. Anyway, so I like to just share that hope with you guys. I know that your country is going through a lot. I know that each individual has good things and hard things in people's lives, and I just feel for you and I pray for you, and I pray that it's encouraging to you, getting to share the truth that I believe with you, and then to pray with you. So today I'm going to read from John chapter 14, verses 1 through 7. Through 7? Through 6. So if you want to follow along, John 14, 1 through 6. And these verses are just about, it was talking about Jesus, that he was going to, because he came to earth, he died, he rose again, and then he was just telling the people who served him, his disciples who lived with him, that he was going to go away in heaven where he is now, but that he's coming back. And so that's what this one's about. It says, let not your, oh, hang on, let me change the version so it's not too old of English. It says, let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. And where I go, you know, and the way you know. And that's just talking about heaven, is that Jesus went to make a place for those who believe in him, who he has saved, and that it's a wonderful place, and that he's not just staying there, but he's coming again someday. Verse 5, Thomas said to him, Lord, we do not know where you are going, and how can we know the way? Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me. And I just love these verses because it says that there's hope for us now and in the future, and that Jesus is coming back, and that he's the way to God, and we just have to believe in him. So we can always call out to him. So we'll go ahead and pray, and then we'll be dismissed. Dear Lord, I thank you for this day. I